Oh, come on! How's it going, everybody? It's the Broken Controller Club back with another review. My name's Ed, and I'm your host. Today we're looking at Narita Boy, which, no matter how many times I've heard the name said in the game's opening title along with the end credits, I still feel like I'm saying it wrong. But then, I'm Cuban and can barely roll my R's, so do not expect greatness from me. So I have to admit, I was pretty skeptical going into Narita Boy because it's got that retro look that's so popular now, along with the 80s coat of paint and synthwave music, and I usually recoil away from things that are trendy at the time, but then I decided to give it a shot anyway, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised with how much I liked this game, and am happy to say that all my reservations about it were gone by the time I beat it. The story is reminiscent of classic movies like the original Tron and The Last Starfighter, and it's actually so good that I'm not going to spoil much of it here. You play as this kid who's been summoned into a game by an entity called the Motherboard to help save this virtual world of Narita 1 from an evil called him, who intends to use his army called the Stallions to get out into the real world and take it over, but first he's got to take over the system. Your job, among other things, is to restore the memories of the creator to help destroy him once and for all. So there's a ton of world building throughout the game, but the first 10 or 15 minutes, at least in my opinion, start pretty slowly, and then after that it's a good mix of action and a little exploring. You'll learn about the world and all the characters that make it up. Occasionally this is all hard to follow because the game uses a ton of different, more computery names for real-life objects and people, and I get that the intent was to make the game more immersive, but there were times where I just couldn't keep track of what was being talked about. If you're someone that likes to skip past the story and get to the action, you can still do that here, but you're not going to know what the hell is going on, and you're going to be lost most of the time. Not just story-wise, but also in the game, as there's plenty of times that characters will talk to you and give you a directive of where to go, and they'll only tell you once. And that's one of the few real problems I had with this game, which is the exploration and the progression. See, just checking out the objective window isn't always helpful enough, and you'll do a lot of backtracking in this game, though in the game's defense, your backtracking is usually limited to each world that you're in. It's not going to be like Resident Evil, where you're 3 hours in and you get a key to a door in the first hallway you walk through in the first 10 minutes of the game that you totally forgot about, and you don't want to go all the way back there because you have 2 shotgun shells, a voucher for a free Happy Meal from McDonald's that once again got your 7-year-old's order wrong, and a sock with quarters in it left to defend yourself. No, a simple map would have done the job, and there's a ton of times in this where I really just wanted to remember where I was going. Also irritating is that you can't read the keys that you pick up, so that's going to further confuse you in figuring out how to progress. So for example, maybe you decided to put the controller down to go pour a drink. Then you get asked by your kid to do something. Then you use the bathroom. Then you get harassed by work for something that they could have done themselves. Then you use the bathroom again because, you've been drinking. Then you get a snack because you've been drinking, and maybe you go buy something online because by now you're feeling pretty lit, and why not? Then you come back to the game and forget what the key was for before getting up for another drink. You see what I mean now? Maps. The pacing in the game is totally fine, but when you're not fighting enemies, you're just finding keys and also looking at the backgrounds and even the foregrounds for passwords that'll get you into the other areas. This does get pretty boring by the end of the game, and you really just want to skip past that stuff to fight more and see where the story is going. So the art style in this game is great. As you can already tell, it's got this pixelated art style, but it also has some pretty decent animation to it, and the detail and effects of things like fire and sword swings and explosions look really good, and you don't get tired of looking at it at all. Each world has a different theme, and you'll see plenty of computery looking backgrounds, but there's also city skylines and deserts and rainy lighthouses and oceans and sprawling red landscapes that really feel like you're this small character in a really vast, infinite world. Each world has a distinct color, but despite that, I didn't really get bored with the aesthetics of each one. The characters all have a certain clothing and styling to them that reminded me a lot of Tron, but this doesn't just feel like a computer program. Bits of code that look like citizens that walk around, and they go to bars, have jobs, and there's even more dark material, like seeing ones that have been tortured and killed, for example. The art style also changes when going through the creator's memories, as you'll learn more about him and all the events that led him to creating Narita 1 and why he's lost his memories to begin with. So from beginning to end, there's a lot of personality on display in this game. I loved the enemy design in this game. You get a quick introduction to each new enemy you encounter, and there's a lot of them, and it's everything from zombies to skeleton knights to witches and tanks and all sorts of others that are unique in looks and attacks and how you defeat them. The bosses start kind of basic in the beginning of the game as well, but they also get increasingly crazy and unique in the design, and you'll really enjoy fighting them. They're not that difficult, but the encounters are still fun and memorable, and the synthwave and rock music used for fighting these guys is suitably epic. Their life bar is a beating heart that pumps faster and starts spurting blood as you damage the boss, and eventually it explodes when they take the final hit. It's really satisfying, and it also reminded me of that episode of The Simpsons where Homer had a heart attack and they had that close-up of his heart freaking out the whole time. And I do want to mention the music separately. If you like synthwave or early to mid-80s pop at all, then you'll love the soundtrack for this game. It's deliciously 80s, and even out of combat, the music is subtle but brings a ton of atmosphere to the world you're in, and then ramps up to 11 for the combat. The end credits also feature a karaoke track with the words on the screen, and I thought that was really fun. It's one of the few games where I looked up how to buy the soundtrack separately because I dug it so much. So that brings me to the combat. The game is basically a 2D hack and slash, and it has plenty of variety to keep things interesting, though the movement and especially the jumping is a little floaty. Like, it reminded me of the Little Big Planet games and how Sackboy jumps, and you never quite feel 100% confident in where you're landing. You'll unlock a bunch of abilities over time, including an upward and downward strike, a dash, and the ability to heal during combat. The healing sounds like it works in theory, but in practice, it's kinda clunky. Basically, you hold down one of the buttons, and in the Xbox's case, it's the Y button, and he'll start charging up like he's about to become Super Saiyan, and then he'll get a unit of health back. By the end of the game, you'll get a max of 4 units you can heal back mid-combat, and in order to get back the energy to do it, you damage enemies. Healing breaks up the combat and leaves you open to get punished more than it'll help, and there's lots of times I try to sneak a heal in and get nailed by an enemy and I wish I hadn't even tried. Other than that, there's no other ways to heal in this game. Don't be surprised if every boss fight you get to, you're at half health or worse, and in that case I found it's just easier to die and come back with full, or in some cases half health, and have a better chance at winning. Checkpoints are pretty frequent in this game, and there's no penalty for dying, so why not? There's also different versions of a special ability that you get over time that let you match your character's color to the colors of enemies you're fighting, so you'll do a lot more damage to them, but also take more damage in return. It's an interesting risk-reward system that helps speed up combat, and it's fun to tear through enemies quickly. So at the end of the day, Narita Boy is a really cool action game that has fun combat, beautiful graphics, and a story that's full of heart and actually got me in the feels on a few occasions. It starts slow, but by the ending, I was really glad I stuck with it, and at the very end, it sets it up for a sequel, and for once, I'm really excited for that. The exploration could use some tweaking and some extra guidance, and I wanted the combat and movement to feel tighter than it was, but you do get used to it, and these are just minor complaints about an otherwise great game that you should certainly try out. It's on Game Pass currently, so you have nothing to lose if you've got a subscription. And that's all the news that's fit to print today. I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I did making it. If so, hit that subscribe button and give it a like, and we'll do this again soon. Congratulations! You're one of an elite few to make it to the end of the video. Reward yourself by hitting the round subscribe button in the middle, and then check out the other goodies I've got in the links next to it.